If you love supercars and you love inexpensive ones that look like they cost a lot, we are going to break down the finest ones you can afford. Hello and welcome back to MIA Luxury Cars. In today's video, we will be going to talk about the cheap supercars you can afford now. Let's get started. Audi R8. A car that has a big screen fame, the Audi R8 is possibly the most well-known supercar purely by being Iron Man's ride of choice. And for good reason, the Audi R8 is based on the same chassis as the Lamborghini Gallardo. The R8 has cemented itself as a bona fide supercar, plus the Audi easily outshines most other cars in the looks department, with its gorgeous curves and iconic carbon side blades. But the beauty does not stop there. The manual version sports car of the best gated shifters ever is the modern car. It's an ode to a bygone era where speed and emotion dictated the best. The German rockets 260 miles an hour in less than 3.7 seconds. In V10 trim, it will blast through the quarter mile in 11.4 seconds. That's as fast as this car, a 2018 AMG GT-R, which is a modern car with F1 technology built into it. So the V10 is definitely the one that you want to get, especially if you want to just shake and bake. But here it is. Ideal, we like well-rounded cars. This R8 has a 4.2-liter V8 and it's no slouch either. And because this car weighs less than the V10, it just feels way more like a driver's car. Plus, there's no sound that's quite like a straight pipe. German V8 rip into the red line that sounds so good, whichever engine you choose. You're gonna be a winner because all of RH came with all-wheel drive and their power delivery was rear-wheel bias, meaning you could slide its rear end out of the drift sideways all day long. So you're probably saying this car sounds too good to be true and there's no way that you can afford it, and they are a lot of money, but they are a lot less money than you think they are. Like this recently sold for $44,200 on eBay. With 75 bids, that's an incredible value for a supercar and an ideal deal. Porsche 997 Turbo. From one German manufacturer to another, although this time the recipe, well, it includes forced induction. The 911 Turbo it's not a supercar. A stable of 480 of them rocket this car from 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. Supercars that cost way more money like this Ferrari F50 have a hell of a time keeping up, and that's because of the legendary Metzger motor that's hanging out back of the 997 Turbo. Is quite the masterpiece. In fact, it's the engine that powered the legendary 911 GT1 car. So you know this thing is tired and true and on the racetrack, and it was engineered to be bulletproof from the factory. And remember, this thing doesn't have one but two snails bolted to the engine, and that can mean one thing and one thing only. As a result, there's a ton of 997 turbos driving around with powered bumped up to 700 plus horsepower, and even then it doesn't need much engine work. Now, can we call this thing a supercar? There are quite a few 997 turbos making 1,500 plus horsepower. Yeah, these Metzger motors can handle it, and these things are some of the fastest cars on the planet and well ripped from a dig because their high-tech all-wheel drive will put the power down seamlessly. The 997 Turbo is pushing this much power as usually recorded. Cars used for runway racing, meaning they are so fast that they need an airport to get up to speed. And remember, these are 911s, and so they're not all about straight line speed. You're also piloting one of the greatest handling chassis ever designed. Porsche knew exactly what they were doing, and they were putting this car together, and it shows. And right now is the best time to buy one yourself, because with turbo examples dipping into the 30s, this 911 purchase is way above its weights in both the looks and power department. And if you snag one of these, you can be embarrassing cars that cost six figures with a German missile, and that cost about the same as a hybrid Toyota Camry. Ferrari 355. When it was first released in the late 90s, it was one of the most beautiful cars Ferrari had ever made. It's a perfect mix of the wedge-shaped cars that Ferrari used to make, blended perfectly with the gentle curves that we've come to know with the more modern Ferraris. However, it gets way better. There is a big difference when you hear a GT350 to leave a car show and when you hear a 355 wake like a phantom into the distance. The 355 is able to produce such a sonorous symphony is due to its radical 5 valves per cylinder design, which allowed it to breathe a lot more than its predecessors. It's no wonder it shook the supercar world when it was first released in the 375 horsepower. 3.4-liter V8 helped scoot this bad boy to 60 miles an hour in 4.6 seconds in the manual trim, and if you opt for the F1, which is the automatic, it takes 0.1 seconds more. But wait, 4.6 seconds, that's lower than 997 turbo and the R8 that we've already talked about. How is that a supercar? Well, remember guys, this is a Ferrari. It may not be about the fastest. Well, remember guys, this is a Ferrari. It may not be the fastest 0 to 60 time, but ticks all of the boxes in the looks and sound department that is intoxicating. But a word of caution on the 355S, they're a bit expensive to maintain. These older Ferraris need the entire engine out to do maintenance, like timing belts, and the bills can add up quickly. Examples of the 355S can be had for pretty cheap, starting around 55,000, and that isn't exactly cheap, but this is cheap for a Ferrari that looks like this. Nissan GT-R. This cheap supercar hails from the land of the rising sun. The legendary Nissan GT-R, let's talk about his history for a second. When the older Nissan R32 GT-R was released, it dominated racing series in both Japan and Australia so bad that the organizers had to try to keep other racers from leaving. If you were to look up legend in the dictionary, our 32 GT-R would be next to it, and this is around the time when the GT-R coined the name Godzilla because it was simply unstoppable. The next couple of iterations in the GT-R spanked many other racer series in similar fashion, and when the R35 Nissan GT-R was released, the world was waiting for the successor to the infamous Godzilla. And did Nissan ever deliver the R35 GT-R? Came out in the late 2000s and was equipped with 480 horsepower coming from a twin turbocharged V6 mounted in the front of the car, and later iterations of the GT-R packed even more punch with a beautiful Nismo version, putting out over make it faster than the McLaren 600 LP and the Porsche 911 GT3 cars. Here's the best part though, since the GT-R is a Japanese car, reliability is through the roof and not to have to do too much in the maintenance with the GT-R Plus. There are a plenty of GT-Rs for sale since they've been selling for over a decade, almost a little too long for this current generation, and if you find an early example, you can find them in the 30s, which may be the performance bargain of the century. Lamborghini Gallardo. Named after a breed of fighting bulls, the Lamborghini Gallardo lives up to its name, with a vicious V10 making around 500 horsepower, enough to fire this car from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds and run the quarter mile in 12.4 seconds. The Italians take their performance seriously. Now this set of performance benchmark when it first came out and the world took notice. This was the best-selling Lamborghini of all time, selling around 14,000 units. Well, you see, as I mentioned earlier, the Gallardos share the same chassis as the Audi R8, bringing the cost down, and it also shares a few other components such as the engine, which is found in the V10 Audi R8, further bringing the cost down essentially to you. Could call it the R8 Italian twin, except these ones is a much better looking twin. Much like the Ferrari 355, the Lamborghini is simple yet gorgeous lines stand out in traffic. graphic and a timeless design like this never goes out of style. In fact, the Gallardo was the precursor to the current Lamborghini Huracan, which the entire internet knows and loves. You know, the cars that you can toss on a couple of turbos and it's so fast, it rotates the earth into the wrong direction? Seriously, the Huracan is a brilliant car, and since there were 14,000 guys Arnos built, there's a quite few used ones to choose from, with first-year models coming in at under $60,000 if you look hard enough. So what are your thoughts about this topic? Do you think this video is useful? Please let me know by leaving a comment down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thank you for stopping by to watch. See you on our next video.